There,
Hey, how's it going?
good. And Alessia, hi. You're there also.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. Beautiful day.
Yeah, here too.
Yeah, so I'm not sure we have too much to talk about today. Um, I can give an update that Yakov and I have been working on the GraphQL JS implementation. Well, Yakov has been working on it. I've been reviewing it. We're getting it lined up with what we're proposing for the spec. Uh, Mostly like moving towards like the functional style that we want in the spec. Um, we're making progress there. Uh, I think the next thing is that we're refactoring how Stream is working a little bit. So we're gonna look at that. Um, yeah, I guess the plan overall is that we're uh working on the implementation, getting that in line with the spec. Then I'm gonna review like the spec edits. We'll get something that we're happy with in this group, and then go to the main working group and start getting it reviewed there. Anything you want to add, Yakov?
No, that's I think where things stand. It sounds good. It's good.
Is there anything we should talk about today?
Um, I mean, nothing specific. We were like offline outside of the framework of, the recorded meetings. We were going over a few of the PRs. I have, I have time now, but it doesn't necessarily need to be recorded for posterity. We could because it's a bit granular. I mean, we could go over, some of the pieces of that work, but I think that makes more sense outside the framework of these, meetings, formal meetings.
Yeah, okay. Up to you, whatever you want to do. Did you have anything, Alessia?
Yeah, I've been following some of the work that you both have been doing. Well, Yakov, your PRs and your reviews, Rob, and yeah, it's really exciting to see. And my my main question today was just to get well, a pulse on a couple of things. One that you've already mentioned, which is Stream. Um, I just noticed that in some of the versions of the um, the proposed spec edits, Stream was like, it to my mind, probably temporarily descoped, removed to focus on the remaining questions surrounding defer. Um, and so I was curious about the status of defer and Stream in a single proposal. And also, since this version seems to be like, I think Benji on Discord referred to it as as being like on its own RFC track. So I'm just curious to touch base with you both to see yeah, how you view it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we still do definitely still want to propose defer and Stream together. Um, probably I guess I would also consider it probably like once Yeah, I should probably close the pull request for the old spec because we're not going that direction anymore. I think it was like last year that we decided on like that new response format. Um, Nothing has changed there since then. That's still the direction we're going. We've just been working on the exactly how to implement it, and I think there's still some work to do, but we're a lot closer now. So yeah, just trying to get all of that in order, then give the spec edits another pass through and reviews, then I'll probably just open like have whatever the new PR is, that'll be the spec that we're going forward with.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious if like if a new PR will be seen as, the um just carrying on the mantle of the last spec proposal that reached draft two, so that we can I really was only joined and started following the proposal right around that time. So I don't know how long of a process it took to get to stage two, but I understand it was, quite a journey to get to that point. And I know that you've both been working on this for many years. So
Yeah.
yeah, does that seem like something a challenge that you're concerned about at all, starting with a new PR, or does it make sense to have that clean split between the two, since this is a new response format?
I mean, I don't really think there's too much of a practical difference. Like, just I just want to like start fresh because there's like a lot of stale comments on that one and stale discussions. I mean, it's been like this group we've been working through it. Like, I think that most of the people on the TSC are familiar with the new response format, so it's not like we're starting from scratch again. I don't think that, yeah, I don't think that it would be a long road to move the new proposal to stage two once get to the point that we're ready to start presenting it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it sounded like there was broad consensus for the format. But there are two PRs up, I think, for just defer with the new format. Benji has one and I have one. And I think there's been discussion, I think, I think one of the recorded discussions when Benji presented his proposal, and then I don't, and I think at maybe a previous group, I presented like a similar type of proposal. So they're like pros and cons of both. And I think the main pro of Benji's was like a very small diff and a very small number of new concepts. Obviously, he might do a better job of summarizing his own, but what we did is or what I did is I worked from the implementation that we have, and then and worked from that to match the spec. And I've been trying to like bring it in line and simplify it as much as possible, like in the direction of Benji's PR. I don't know that we'll get as far as 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 simple as his is. And I guess that's the big question, I think, in terms of what language actually will be in the spec. Hopefully we can get over that speed bump, because I think there's broad agreement on the new format. And so hopefully it's just a question of how exactly to specify it.
And it's not like it's a two competing proposals. Benji had just wrote that up just as a vehicle to communicate the way that he was thinking about the direction that we should be going in.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's just useful context as someone who's missed a couple of these meetings over the last many months and has just been like following along with the PRs and async work that's been going on. Because yeah, I think that as Jovi was asking in the Discord about different community implementations and which stage of the spec they've implemented, that there's just I know that like some projects are holding off adopting the Alpha 3 version with the new response format, and because there's an anticipation of what is currently underway. So it's good to know that the response format is that there's broad consensus there, and that there's a lot of overlap and complementing ideas between Benji's PR with the draft of the spec text and yours, Yakov. So yeah, that definitely just like confirms my impression. It's just good to know. Yeah, I don't think I had any other questions. Just wanted to sort of, update myself. So thanks for talking through that.
You're at Apollo, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys implemented any of the new response format? Or are you still
No,
working
not
off the?
Yeah, still working off of Alpha 2, and I think that many community projects are the vast majority that I can see, and so yeah, I think it's an important question to see when different folks, like obviously clients can support different versions of the response format probably more easily than gateway or server implementations can. And I know that I was even building a demo with Relay the other day, and building the network adapter to be compatible with the stage 2 of the spec, or even stage 3, because I think Relay is at stage 1 or maybe even a different version that it isn't compatible with the incremental array. So yeah, just trying to think of compatibility in the ecosystem, and whether or not whether or not the Alpha 3 and future Alpha 4 version can be thought of as hopefully being like indistinguishable when it comes to the response format, and really the biggest difference being more of a concern of server-side implementations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. There hasn't really been any discussion on changing the response format since we got consensus on that last update. It's really is just the implementation that we're working through. And like the latest published alpha is a working implementation of that. It's just not how we want. It's not how we wanted to write the spec. So we're refactoring it so that when we know what is like, we know that the way that it's written in the implementation of what's there now is not likely to be accepted as spec edits. So we are getting them close together, pretty much.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, no other questions on my end. So yeah, thanks again. I don't know if there is anything else on the agenda, or if you wanted to both stay on the call, but I'm happy to hop off and let you keep working if that's the case.
For my part, I have time now, and you're more than welcome to stay and participate even as much as you want. But I don't know if if that works for you, Rob, or for you else.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I guess what I would show, is my microphone, can you guys hear me actually? Well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I can hear you
okay.
well.
Yes.
Okay, so what I was, what I think, I guess we're up to is the stream, is that right? The changes, like you said, so I'm gonna try to share, see, I just made a small change. I'm gonna try to share my, yeah, screen. So zooms, their screen. So right now I'm on, I'm looking in my editor, but I'm on the PR. Let's see if I can get the number and just pop it into the chat. It's 4098. Let's see, chat, I can just pop that in. So I think my editor. So you guys can see the editor up with the file
Yes.
changes. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna start with just I guess showing the like the goals of this PR. So this is the stream test file, and it's the only test file with changes, nothing in defer. And basically, what we should be seeing in this file, what I hope we're seeing, is that instead of when we have a batch of stream items that are all ready to be sent in the same payload, instead of sending them in separate incremental entries, we send them in the same incremental entry. I mean, there's only one index in that array, and we just send multiple items. So that's basically the only test change that we should see. And obviously, if we don't have multiple stream items ready, there shouldn't be a test change at all. I mean, we can only do that optimization, if it's happening, if those results are available. And it'll also work, if one of the results is null for a nullable field, and that's what this example is showing. And that's basically the test change. That's not the goal of the PR. The goal of the PR was to treat the stream as a stream. And so basically what we did in this version of the implementation and in the spec is every time we return a GraphQL result, we'll also return a reference to like the pending incremental data that will be completed in later results. And so those could be defer entries, meaning deferred group field sets that will complete the deferred fragment that is now pending, or it could be a stream item. And we used to implement streams as like the first result would return a reference to the next stream item, and that next stream item would return a reference to the stream item after that. And so now I'm looking at the types file. So we had basically two types of incremental data. One was the deferred group field set record, and that can be thought of like that pending deferred group field set. And the other one was the stream items record, which was the next pending stream item, and singular actually, because even though stream items was the name of the payload, we would only send one item in each payload, every single time in each array. And so the next stream items, that stream items itself, if we would, if we, we'll look at the result of that record, would contain a reference to the next stream items, and so on and so on and so on. And so basically, we create a linked list of stream items, and we do that even though it actually creates like a bunch of overhead. And so if we see the change over here on the type side over here is that that's no longer the case, and we treat the incremental data the pending data we look at as the entire stream, and therefore we're able to process the stream. We operate on the stream as a independent logical unit, the stream itself, and therefore we're able to look, accomplish that goal in the test also. That wasn't like that optimization wasn't the main goal. The main goal was to to avoid the extra work of creating this linked list, but as a side effect, or maybe like a ancillary goal, we get the optimization of sending multiple results at the same time. This test change over here is a simplification. I used I can't remember if I needed to do this or I just thought it was a simpler, instead of using a more complicated union of different types of stream items. I just used a single one over here that has a bunch of optional fields, and that was just as good. And we no longer needed this function, so that we took out. So that explains that diff. And basically, and then we have the type itself. We basically now we need a type to reference. Before we had the stream items type that wasn't really a stream items type. It was really a singular item that we would always wrap with an array. And now we're going to need both of them, because we're going to be processing that array and turning it into the stream items itself. So the way we do that is in our incremental graph. So our incremental graph is what's organizing all the different pending bits of pending data and processing them. And so now, let's see. Well, actually, I think I'm going to need to show you how the executor works first. And those are the only other two changes. Now, there's a lot of green and red on this PR, but I can promise you that it's simpler than it looks. Or actually, you know what? Yeah, my editor just I guess processed some sort of update. There you go. Yeah. So where it hides the things that haven't changed. Okay, so there you can see that most of the stuff isn't changing. Actually, that makes more sense. Instead, except for the stuff at the end in terms of how streams are processed. So that's where we do get a lot of green and red, but the structure of the code is basically the same. Basically, if we encounter a stream, I put it over here. This function moved over here, but basically it's the same function. It's creating a reference to the pending data. Whereas before we got the first bit of asynchronous stream items. Here we just build the queue. And then we're going to process the queue, and that queue is going to hold all of the items that are available from the iterator. And so that's how we're able to inspect whether there's more than one item available. And instead of adding the first stream items to the list of incremental data records, we add the stream record itself. Now, just in case this is confusing, this is an array because this incremental data records could, in theory, could hold multiple different things. It could hold defers. It could hold multiple nested streams. So in this particular case, it's just going to hold the one stream. But this is a collection of multiple pending data that could hold like deferred group field sets, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's an array. So the magic happens not in this field, not in this function, because this is just a call to build the asynchronous queue, and we're just adding that stream as opposed to the first stream item. So this is basically just refactoring code from before. Refactoring code. And the change itself is going to happen in these functions. This is the corresponding function for the synchronous version. And here is the code difference. Here's the synchronous version, but I actually want to show you the asynchronous version first, because it's more intuitive, I think, as to what's happening. So beforehand, and it's not a large change but it helps us, but it accomplishes that optimization. So beforehand, we used to have these functions over here, these prepending functions that that accomplished basically creating that linked list. And as you can see, we no longer need them. And so they're deleted, so we're passing by them. And over here, this is where we would grab the first stream items and return it to the the main executor complete async iter value code. Here, instead of returning the first stream items, we're returning the stream. And what that we're returning the stream item queue. And what that queue is, it's just a simple array of stream items. So now and now we're using that stream item concept record that I mentioned before from the types file, the record and the result. And so again, so we change small diff over there with the S. The function is now called stream item result, and we're passing the stream item queue instead of the stream. Instead of we no longer need the stream record reference, we just need the path from that stream, and that's enough. But otherwise, the structure of the code is basically the same.
So is it like another push-pull implementation where as the stream items are resolved, they go into that queue, and then wherever reading them out? Cool.
Yep. And this is where we push. And that's basically the whole shebang. The rest of these changes are just subtracting things that we actually don't that we no longer need. And the pull, which is a good way to divide it up, the pull basically happens in this new function called onStream items. And basically beforehand, whenever we got a stream items result, we would enqueue it. So over here, we would look at every incremental data record, and it didn't matter whether it was a stream items record or a deferred group field set record. Whenever it would complete, meaning if it was already completed, we would enqueue it immediately. And if it wasn't already completed, whenever the promise representing its completion resolves, then we would enqueue it. But now we take a look and see whether it's a stream. And if it's a stream, we call this function. And this function is an asynchronous function. So we have to, but that should never throw, because all of our promises have been, all of our errors and promises have been caught. And so we call onStream items. And that's basically our function that inspects this queue. And while there are entries on this queue, it enqueues them as a stream items result. So here's where it constructs the plural stream items. And then if it needs to, if there's a promise on the queue, basically it awaits that promise. And so that's how it accomplishes the pulling from that queue and adding it to the queue of completed results. And that's basically the rationale of the PR. There are some function. Everything else is basically things that needed to change, like to accommodate that, like some helper functions needed to change, some type functions needed to change, some things could be simplified, et cetera, et cetera. But that's basically the gist of it. Yeah, so it avoids creating the linked list, and it avoids creating the and it allows us to do that batching. The synchronous version actually ends up being more complicated than the asynchronous version, both previously and in this implementation, because we don't actually naturally have a stream. We have like a collection, and so the question is how to figure it out or how to deal with it. But I think it works a little bit better in this version, But it basically creates the stream item queue is basically like full of items as soon as it's could be full of items as soon as they're created, and we just again we iterate through them when those promises have resolved. So if they've all resolved, then we can spit them out all at the same time. Except the first one we manually make into a promise, just as we did in the previous one, so that it won't block. So that we wait that extra tick and it won't block the executor, and allows it to return, without doing all this work, so that all of this work doesn't delay the initial response. So that's a feature that we have in there already that retained. So we basically that's this extra promise resolve business, and why it ends up looking a little bit more complicated than maybe a naive implementation would. And again, there may be a way to simplify this further, but
This is used even when the resolver returns an array of promises.
Yeah. So
you
this
just push
is
all the
used,
promises onto the queue.
Yeah, we push all the promise, and there is an extra promise inserted always on the first one, an extra tick always inserted on the first one. Even if there is an array of promises, that may not be 100% necessary, but we don't. But yeah, even if there's an array of promises, we do that. Otherwise, I guess we could check. No, but you would have to execute. Yeah, in order to figure out if the first one actually is a promise, you would have to execute it and see if a promise was returned, see if it was indeed asynchronous. So we don't want to do that because maybe it wasn't. So that we have to. Yeah, we'll always have to, I think, add that extra promise resolve. But the code here that's changing is sort of the different lines are changing, but they're not. The fundamentals aren't changing so much.
Yeah, looks good. I'll take another look either later today or tomorrow, and we'll try to get this merged soon.
Okay, the next one is the one after that is just to disable early execution. That's fairly straightforward. Basically, instead of the result being a result itself, it ends up being a function that we just checked. And if it hasn't been, if it is a function, then we need to execute it to get the actual result. I mean, that's the way I implemented that. Sort of like a thunk. And then I changed some of the most of the tests to not use early execution, and then I added a few tests that would use early execution just to make sure we have it ends up satisfying the code coverage. I'm not sure, in theory, I guess another way to do it would be to have like two entirely different versions of all of the tests. But I'm not sure we need that. So I just went with what our utilities require, satisfying the code coverage and so forth. But that was the basic way I implemented it. That's I think
and there's
the last.
a execution flag to.
Yeah, there's an execution. There's an argument that you can pass to execute to by default it's disabled, and you can pass true to, I think, enable early execution to enable it. That is 4097. So 4097, of course, because comes after in the stack, comes after 4098, just to make things interesting.
All right, cool, awesome.
And that basically completes the ideas that I had in terms of the implementation ends up being a little bit simpler still than the spec, just because the spec really doesn't allow any itty bitty mutations at all. And so I took another look at that, trying to think of how I could simplify it further. Like we were able to simplify that whole pruning business of pruning empty deferred fragments. We were able to simplify that a little bit by mutating our array of or set of new pending records. We mutated a little bit, but we're not really allowed to do that in the spec. There may still be a better, different way, to organize, the incremental graph section of the code entirely. I'm hoping that there is, because the simpler the better. And so I'm still thinking about that, but I haven't yet cracked it. So it's basically follows our implementation as best as I can in the defer portion. But I'm hopeful that if we all put our heads together, maybe then we can get it even further.
All right, awesome. So I think that's it for today.
Okay, great.
I'll take a closer look at the PRs, and yeah, see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.